Shalom family, this is part 2 of the physical curses of Yehuda. We're going to be talking about the many diseases that is affecting our mind, body, soul, and is affecting us still to this day. Another physical curse that Moses prophesied to happen to the descendants of Israel was that they would be hit with all types of different sicknesses that would wipe them out. According to Deuteronomy 28:22, he stated that the Lord shall smite thee with a fever and with a consumption, wasting away of the body, and with a fever and inflammation, and with extreme burning, and with the sword, and with blasting, and with mildew. And they, the physical illness, shall pursue thee until you perish. Many of these illnesses happened to our ancestors on the Middle Passage. In case you're not familiar with the Middle Passage, it was the ship route that the Europeans took to transport our ancestors from Africa to the Americas. The Middle Passage usually took more than 7 weeks and has been recorded as the worst experience the Hebrew slaves ever had to face because of the horrible living conditions they had to survive on the ships. Once they boarded the ships, the slaves were chained together, sent to the bottom of the ships, crammed into spaces less than 5 feet high. They were packed together so close that they looked like blocks upon a bookshelf, and they lived like this for weeks and months at a time. As a result of slaves being packed together like sardines without barely any room to breathe, let alone move, many of them were forced to urinate and to take bowel movements on themselves, causing the smell of the bottom of the ships to make people vomit and faint. Consequently, the disease rates on the slave ships were very high, and many of the slaves died from incurable fevers. I'm going to reference the book The Black Cargo by Daniel Mannix. He states wet and blowing weather having an occasion to cause the porthole window to be shut and the grating windows bars to be covered. Fluxes and fevers among the Negroes ensued. The deck, that is the floor of their rooms, were so covered with blood and mucus which had proceeded from them in consequences of flux that it resembled a slaughterhouse. Numbers of the slaves have fainted. They were carried upon deck when several died. Just as Moses prophesied, fevers had consumed the Hebrew slaves and caused them to perish. Moving right along, another prophecy of Moses stated that, "And the Lord will smite thee with the botch of Egypt, and with the emerods, and with the scab, and with the itch, wherein those cannot be healed," in Deuteronomy 28:27. The botch of Egypt in this verse is referring to a boil, which was a skin disease similar to shingles that Yahuwah brought upon the Egyptians to help Moses free the Israelites from slavery. The emerods was also a skin disease, dried up sores that appeared on the surface of one's skin, causing a continual irritating itch. In modern day terms, this is called smallpox, a disease that many of the slaves feared getting because unlike today, it was incurable during their time. If one person on the ship caught smallpox, then the entire ship would get it. According to the Encyclopedia of the Middle Passage, epidemics of disease spread like wildfire in the tightly packed cargo holds and could wipe out hundreds at a time. Smallpox was particularly disastrous because there was no cure, and slaves showing the slightest sign of smallpox or other deadly diseases were thrown overboard alive to prevent an epidemic aboard the ship, which could cost the trader thousands and thousands of dollars. It is said that the sharks often followed the slave ships in search of food because so many bodies were thrown overboard. Consequently, many of our enslaved ancestors died before even arriving to the Americas due to incurable physical illness and skin diseases. As the prophet Moses predicted, the botch and emerald smallpox infected our Hebrew Israelites ancestors to the point of death and were not able to be healed. However, not only did Yahuwah promise to bring us the disease and plagues that were written in the book of the law, he also promised to bring upon new diseases that mankind has ever known. In Deuteronomy 28:59-61, it states that Yahuwah will bring upon you and your descendants extraordinary plagues, great and prolonged plagues, and serious and prolonged sicknesses. Moreover, he will bring back on you all the diseases of Egypt, of which you were afraid, and they shall cling to you. Also, every sickness, every plague which is not written in this book of the law will Yahuwah bring upon you until you are destroyed. Notice the Father said to you and your descendants. This means you and me. To prove that these curses have been placed upon us, in part 3, we will look at the physical conditions of our people today.